हेलो गाइस, वेलकम और वेलकम बैक टू लॉस्टॉर्मिंग प्लेटफॉर्म। मैं हूं शालिनी और आज हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे अपने एजेंसी की सीरीज़ को। अगर आपने इसके पहले के वीडियोस को नहीं देखा है देन उसका लिंक नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में और ऊपर कार्ड में आ जाएगा। प्लीज़ वॉच दैट बिफोर वॉचिंग दिस वीडियो। एंड अगर अभी तक आपने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है देन प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब टू लॉस्टॉर्मिंग। लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द वीडियो. So, effect of agency on contract with third person is dealt from section 226 to 235 of agency. Now, section 226 talks about enforcement and consequence of agent's contract. So, जहाँ पे contract is entered into through an agent and obligation arising from act done by an agent, then उस case में the contract may be enforced in the same manner and will have the same legal consequences as if the contract had been entered into and the act done by the principal in person. So even if the contract is entered by an agent, the effect of it will be same as if it is entered by the principal. Then 227 talks about principal how far bound when agent exceeds authority. So when an agent does more than he is authorized to do, and when the part of what he does which is within his authority can be separated from the part which is beyond his authority. So much of what he does as is within his authority is binding as between him and his principal. So agar agent does an act which is authorized by him and also exceeds his authority and does an act which is not authorized, but उन दोनों acts को अगर हम separate कर सकते हैं, then उस case में principal will be liable only for the act which is authorized. Let's look at an illustration. A, being owner of a ship and cargo, authorizes B to procure an insurance of 4,000 rupee on the ship. B procures a policy for 4,000 rupee on the ship and another for the like sum on the cargo. So इस case में अब A is bound to pay the premium for the policy on the ship but not for the premium for the policy on the cargo. क्योंकि इस एग्जाम्पल में प्रिंसिपल ने ऑथराइज किया था एजेंट को ओनली टू प्रोक्योर एन इंश्योरेंस ऑन द शिप, बट कार्गो के लिए ऐसा कुछ ऑथराइजेशन नहीं था, इसीलिए द प्रिंसिपल इज ओनली लायबल फॉर द प्रीमियम फॉर द पॉलिसी ऑन द शिप. ठीक है, इसके बाद सेक्शन 228 टॉक्स अबाउट प्रिंसिपल नॉट बाउंड व्हेन एक्सेस ऑफ एजेंट्स अथॉरिटी इज नॉट सेपरेबल. So where an agent does more than he is authorized to do and जो उसने act किया है that is beyond the scope of his authority and also it cannot be separated from what is within the authority, then उस case में principal is not bound to recognize the transaction at all. Alright, let's look at the illustration. A authorizes B to buy 500 sheep for him. B buys 500 sheep and 200 lambs for one sum of 6,000 rupee. So now you cannot separate कि उस सम में what is for the sheep and what is for the lamb, and therefore in this case A में repudiate the whole transaction. ठीक है, तो अगर ट्रांजैक्शन को सेपरेट किया जा सकता है जो ऑथराइज्ड और फ्रॉम नॉट ऑथराइज्ड, देन प्रिंसिपल विल बी लायबल ओनली फॉर द ऑथराइज्ड एक्ट, और अगर सेपरेट नहीं किया जा सकता देन प्रिंसिपल कैन अवॉइड द इंटायर ट्रांजैक्शन एज इन दिस इलस्ट्रेशन. इसके बाद सेक्शन 229 टॉक्स अबाउट कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज ऑफ नोटिस गिवन टू एजेंट. तो जहाँ पे कोई भी नोटिस या इंफॉर्मेशन इज ऑब्टेन्ड बाय द एजेंट, provided वो notice or information is obtained in the course of business transacted by him for the principal, then उस case में the principal and the third parties have the same legal consequences as if it had been given to or obtained by the principal. So it will bind the principal in the same way as if the information had been obtained by the principal. After this, section 230 says agent cannot personally enforce nor be bound by a contract on behalf of principal. So in the absence of any contract to that effect, an agent cannot personally enforce contract entered into by him on behalf of his principal, nor is he personally bound by them. Because we all know that agent only has a representative character. He can create a legal relation between his principal and a third party. But personally, principal is liable for that. And it is the principal who has to enforce the contract, right? And therefore, as per this section, agent cannot personally enforce the contract, nor can he be personally bound by the contract. But there is an exception to this case. And the second part of this section talks about presumption of contract to contrary. So, if agent is personally made liable, then in that case, a contract to the contrary is presumed. And it is presumed in the following circumstances. The first is where the contract is made by an agent for the sale or purchase of goods for a merchant resident abroad. Secondly, where the agent does not disclose the name of his principal, उस केस में agent को personally liable किया जा सकता है. And third, where the principal, though disclosed, cannot be sued. Alright, so after this, section 231 talks about rights of parties to a contract made by agent not disclosed. So if an agent makes a contract with a person who neither knows nor has reason to suspect that he is an agent, तो फिर उस केस में his principal may require the performance of the contract, but the other contracting party has, as against the principal, the same right as he would have had as against the agent if the agent had been principal. So इस part of the section के according अगर जो थर्ड पार्टी है दैट इज द कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग पार्टी उसे नहीं पता है दैट एजेंट इज नॉट एन एजेंट ऑलराइट ही इज कॉन्ट्रैक्टिंग विद द एजेंट थिंकिंग दैट द एजेंट इज ओनली द प्रिंसिपल देन उस केस में द एजेंट द थर्ड पार्टी विल हैव द सेम राइट एज अगेंस्ट द प्रिंसिपल as he would have had as against the agent if the agent had been the principal. ठीक है? Now the second part says if the principal discloses himself before the contract is completed, then उस केस में contracting parties की क्या right है? Then the contracting party may refuse to fulfill the contract if he can show that if he had known who was the principal in the contract or if he had known that the agent was not the principal, he would not have entered into the contract. ठीक है? So first part के according contracting party can enforce the transaction as against the principal in the same way as he can enforce it as against the agent अगर agent principal होता तो and second part के according अगर principal पहले ही disclose कर दे that he is the principal and अगर let's say contracting party को उस principal के साथ transaction में आना ही नहीं था so contracting party has the right to refuse the transaction. All right. Then section 232 talks about performance of contract with agents supposed to be principal. So where one man makes a contract with another, neither knowing nor having reasonable ground to suspect that the other is an agent, then उस case में the principal, if he requires the performance of the contract, can only obtain such performance subject to the rights and obligation subsisting between the agent and other party to the contract. अगर third party enter कर रहा है contract में with an agent विदाउट नॉलेज कि जिसके साथ वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में एंटर कर रहा है वो एक एजेंट है और अब अगर प्रिंसिपल को उस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को परफॉर्म कराना है या इन्फोर्स करना है देन प्रिंसिपल कैन डू सो ओनली सब्जेक्ट टू द राइट्स एंड ऑब्लिगेशन subsisting between the agent and the contracting party. All right. Let's look at the illustration. A, who owes 500 rupees to B, sells 1000 rupee worth of rice to B. A is acting as agent for C in the transaction. But B has no knowledge nor reasonable ground of suspicion that such is the case. Now, in this case, C cannot compel B to take the rice without allowing him to set off A's debt. So, C cannot do anything which will go against agent's right or the right of the third party. After this, section 233 talks about right of person dealing with agent personally liable. So, in case where the agent is personally liable, a person dealing with him may hold either him or his principal or both of them liable. Okay, so the example says A enters into a contract with B to sell him 100 bales of cotton and afterward discovers that B was acting as agent for C. अब A के पास right है that he can either sue the principal or the agent or both of them. So A may sue either B or C or both of them for the price of the cotton. Now section 234 says consequence of inducing agent or principal to act on the belief that principal or agent will be held exclusively liable. So when a person who has made a contract with an agent induces the agent to act upon the belief that the principal only will be held liable or induces the principal to act upon the belief that the agent only will be held liable, he cannot afterwards hold liable the agent or principal respectively. तो इस section के according अगर third person or contracting party comes in contract with an agent that जो भी consequence होगा उनके contract का उसके लिए exclusively principal liable होगा या फिर वो same contract principal के साथ करते हैं कि जो भी इस contract का consequence होगा उसके लिए agent solely responsible होगा then that third party does not have the right to make either the principal or the agent liable respectively. Okay. After this, 235 talks about liability of pretended agent. So a person untruly representing himself to be the authorized agent of another and thereby inducing a third person to deal with him as such agent is liable if his alleged employer does not ratify his act to make compensation to the other in respect of any loss or damage which he has incurred by so dealing. So अगर एक person अपने आप को untruly represent कर रहा है to be an agent एंड देयरबाय अगर वो किसी थर्ड पार्टी को इंड्यूस कर रहा है टू मेक अ डील विद हिम, और उस अग्रीमेंट को अगर एम्प्लॉयर ने रेटिफाई नहीं किया, देन उस केस में द एजेंट विल बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू मेक कॉम्पेंसेशन फॉर द लॉस और डैमेज which the third party has incurred by such dealing. Okay. After this, 236 talks about person falsely contracting as agent not entitled to performance. So a person with whom a contract has been entered into in the character of agent is not entitled to require the performance of it if he was in reality acting not as agent but on his own account. तो अगर कोई अपने आप को बस falsely represent कर रहा है as agent but he is not actually an agent and he is working on his own account, उस केस में फिर उस पर्सन के पास राइट नहीं है टू रिक्वायर द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द एक्ट और प्रॉमिस. आफ्टर दिस सेक्शन 237 टॉक्स अबाउट लाइबिलिटी ऑफ प्रिंसिपल इंड्यूसिंग बिलीव दैट एजेंट्स अनऑथराइज्ड एक्ट वर ऑथराइज्ड. सो जहां पे एन एजेंट हैज विदाउट अथॉरिटी डन एक्ट्स और इनकर्ड ऑब्लिगेशन टू थर्ड पर्सन ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ हिज प्रिंसिपल, the principal is bound by such act or obligation if he has by his words or conduct induced such third party to believe that such act and obligation were within the scope of the agent's authority. Alright, so the agent acted without authority, but afterward principal ने कुछ ऐसा act किया expressly or impliedly that the effect of inducing third person to believe that such act and obligation were within the scope of agent's authority. So उस case में फिर principal will be liable. After this, section 238 talks about effect on agreement of misrepresentation of fraud by agent. So misrepresentation made or fraud committed by agent acting in the course of their business for their principal have the same effect on agreement made by such agent as if such misrepresentation of fraud had been made or committed by the principal. But misrepresentation made or fraud committed by agent in matter which do not fall within their authority do not affect their principal. So अगर misrepresentation of fraud is committed by agent in the course of business, then उसका effect क्या होगा, as if principal ने वो authorize किया था and principal will be liable. But अगर misrepresentation of fraud is committed outside the authority of the business, right, and there was no authority, then उस case में principal will not be liable. With this we have come to an end of the video. Thank you guys. अगर आपको वीडियो पसंद आया then please like, share, and अगर कोई भी suggestion है then please comment your suggestion and subscribe to Lawstorming channel. And यहाँ पे बाकी videos की playlist आ जाएगी, so if you want you may watch that also. मिलते हैं अगले वीडियो में. Bye bye.